speeches first, evaluation later, but crafting speeches. In the crafting of speeches, there are 4 S's. Structure, self, meaning yourself. That's not a typo of shelf. Story and sense of humor. Structure, self, story, sense of humor. Now, here's my question to you. Of these 4, which one do you think you do best? Go ahead and type that in the chat. Which one do you think you do best? Structure, self, story, or sense of humor? You go ahead and put your answer in, and I will sing the song from Jeopardy. No, no one wants that, especially because some of you have just eaten. Didi Mayuri says story, that you do best. Is that right? What's your favorite kind of story, Mayuri?
The story comes with the self then. I think I've lived quite a fair bit of my life. So that's the stories come from myself. So that's the 2 of them together. I'm not sure about the sense of humor.
That's okay. That's all right. So we've got story, self together. Excellent. Charan, you say story. What kind of stories do you like to tell?
Personal and motivational.
Excellent. Deepika, what kind of stories do you like to tell? Deepika, Kumari?
Yeah, sorry. Can you repeat?
What kind of stories do you like to tell?
Personal stories.
Personal stories. Excellent. Very good. Ishui, Sintui, what kind of stories do you like to tell?
The children's story. Yeah.
Children's stories, like the students that you teach, or younger children?
Yeah, the students that I teach. Yeah.
Excellent. Very good. Structure, story, self, and sense of humor are the 4 elements that we're going to be discussing today. In a structure, we can remember this by going 1, 2, 3. A structure can be 1, 2, or 3. It can be 1, a single story. The structure of a speech can be a single story. Of course, the story has to have a beginning, a middle, and an end. It should have conflict, and it should apply a lesson to your audience. If there's no lesson for the audience, it's not that good a story. I know, it could be the most interesting story in the world, but if there's no lesson for the audience, then it's kind of like Grandpa telling his story from when he was a child, and you're going, Grandpa, why are you telling me this? Does this make sense? Why are you telling me this? So it's got to have some sense of purpose. So when dealing with your structure, if you have one main piece, then that's structure 1. I say this because we're not always working with 5 to 7 minute speeches. Sometimes we're working with table topics or any other short speaking situation. When you do a job interview, just one. It's not going to be 5 to 7 minute long answer. You probably have 2 minutes, maybe even just 1 minute. If you meet someone in the elevator or standing in line at the store and you want to talk to them and you want to give a story, one single story, see if you can get it down to a beginning, middle, end, and have a point. Like, oh my gosh, why don't they open up another line? Why is it taking so long at the bank, right? One story. Remember, I said easy as 1, 2, 3. A structure can have 1, 2, or 3. This is 2. If you have a 2-part structure, then you're comparing 2 items usually, such as, should I purchase or should I rent? What was it like before? What was it like after? Maybe it was because you were moving. And so what was it like before I came to this city? What was it like after I went to this city? Or maybe vacation, things that I liked, things that I didn't like. So if you structure your speech into 2 parts, then you're comparing them. Yes, you're comparing. So you have to fill in the dots. You have to be able to explain to people, I'm comparing these two. Does one have to be better than the other? Not necessarily. If I were to ask, how many of you are parents, mothers or fathers? Yeah, okay. And some of you might even have two kids, right? I mean, I know Irene, you just got one, but some people got two. And what if your child asks you, Mommy, Daddy, who do you like better? Me or my brother? Me or my sister? Right? And you're like, you want to compare both, but maybe you don't want to have, I love this one more than the other. So that's a comparison. That's if you have two. A structure can have three. Now, usually when you give a speech and it's an informative style speech, there will be 3 points of evidence. What I mean by that is you have your introduction and you have your conclusion, yes? In the middle, you have point number 1, point number 2, and point number 3. 3 points of evidence. Let me give you a couple tips on this. Even though the introduction is what you say first, you don't write that first. Chandra, why don't we write it first? If the introduction is the first thing I say, then why can't I write it first?
Yeah, because like it needs a strong opening. It needs to be connected to the audience. That's the reason like why we have to go with this structure, like what you just mentioned.
Absolutely. But specifically, why should I not write it first? I'll say it first, but why should I not write the introduction first? Oh, Animesh has a plan. Out of that, or he's just high-fiving his little digital hand.
Oh,
What's up, man?
yes. Oh, yeah. Thank you so much, Fursey. So, because every speech has to have a takeaway, yes? You need to first decide on your takeaway.
Good. Absolutely. You got to figure out your point first. Very simply put, if you cannot write your introduction first, because how can you introduce something that you haven't written yet? You see my point? Write your main body speech first. 1, 2, 3. Write those first. And then you write the introduction. A lot of people get stuck trying to write a speech because they start trying to write the way that they speak. Nope. Structure the body first. Structure the body first. Then do your introduction and then the conclusion. But absolutely, have a point. Grandpa, why are you telling me this? Okay, we're going to go back to that a lot because a lot of people are going to look at you going, Grandpa, why are you telling me this? I know that happens to Chandra a lot. His grandkids, he doesn't even have grandkids. You probably got great grandchildren. All right, so 3 points of evidence. Anything you have, 3 points of evidence. Now, these 3 points, they can simply be point number 1, point number 2, and then my answer. That can be 3. But in this particular case, I was just thinking about, well, because I don't know a lot about Indian food. I'm sorry. I don't know much about constructing a good dish of curry, but I chose pizza because international pizza kind of goes okay. And in case I have to do this presentation for 5-year-olds, it's either going to be pizza or chicken nuggets. Okay, so if you're going to give a speech, you can structure it into 3 points, such as if you did pizza, the crust, the sauce, and the toppings. Or if you're going to do sports, you can do, I do sports to win because I like to win. I do sports to be fit. And I like sports because I like to observe others do it. Yes? 3 different categories, and then your intro and conclusion. Any questions? Good, no questions. No, are there any questions so far? Because it's about to get complicated. I know that was very basic. You ready? Animesh, you ready? All right, here we go. Story. The first S was structure. The second S is story. A lot of people think that story is equivalent to speech. It's not. Story is a component of speech. It's not the speech. Meaning if you think that telling a story is the whole speech, you kind of missed the point. Get it? The point. Grandpa, why are you telling me this? You kind of missed the point. So story is part of the whole structure. Story is just a part of the whole structure. Now, in a story, you've got to have a plot, character, conflict, and a pivot point. Plot, character, conflict, and pivot point. Most of us understand basic things about a story. I think all of you kind of understand what a plot is. Yes? A plot, you have status quo, and then you have inciting, and then you have climax, and then you have resolution. Status quo. What does status quo mean? Who knows what status quo means? Ishita, can you tell us what status quo means? How's your Latin?
Not very good. Sorry.
Oh, that's all right.
Yeah, but I believe status quo means normal, life as usual. That is what it means.
That's wrong. It means normal, life as usual. So, yes, absolutely. You're correct. Normal. When we tell a story, you first have to tell us what is normal. We don't know what strange is unless we know what normal is. We don't know what conflict is unless we know what normal is. Yes? So start with what is normal. And then something happens. And then it rises. There's a climax. And then there's a resolution. And then there's a French word called denouement. All right? So that's a basic plot. Now, here's an interesting thing. When you have a plot, this is where life would be for status quo. As Ishita told, is it Ishita or Ishita?
Ishita, yes.
Ishita. Ishita was talking about status quo, and that's here. If nothing happened, my life would be here. Yes? If nothing happened, my life would continue on. But because Ishita had some traumatic experience, and the traumatic experience had a climax, and then rising, and then falling action, and then it ends. Now take a look at where it ends. This is status quo. This is where it ends. This is important. This is status quo. This is where it ends. Why are they different, Irene? Why are they different?
Because after the resolution, you had a learning.
Yes.
So you grow. And so you're not at the same as the status quo. You're not the same as the beginning. You have grown. So you better.
Yes. We have to remember that. This is the lesson learned, right? This is status quo. This is the lesson learned. We have to remember we're not back to normal. We're here. We're here. We're different. Grandpa, why are you telling us this? Because I want you to be here, not here. You're telling your audience, I want you to be here, not here. That's theme. So when you're thinking plot, think of that. All right, we'll come back to that. The next thing you need to have, remember, the next thing you need to have in our story is character. Yes, we've talked about plot and now character. Like if you look across your screen, you're thinking, man, who of these people are characters? Animesh, there's a character right there. You know what I'm saying? He's a character. I know, sorry, Animesh. I'm just gonna bully you all day long. Oh, I hope you brought a lunch because I'm gonna eat it. Okay, here we go. Animesh, am I even saying your name right? He's like, it doesn't matter. I feel bad no matter what. All right, character. Character Who are you? Not just your name, but what's your personality? What are you about? That's the status quo, right? Who are you at the beginning of the story? What do you want? What do you want? That's a really big question. What do you want? That's a huge question. It's not about what you say or what you do. It's what do you want? Status quo. I want this. Then something changed and now I want that. Right? I came to Toastmasters because I wanted to be able to speak in front of my group that I'm leading at work. But because of all this, because of my mentor, because of all the new things I learned, now I want to be a leader. Yes? So what I want changed. I'll talk about that in a moment. But for now, understand character is about who are you? What do you want? What is getting in the way? What is getting in the way? And this, by the way, is not just for you, the protagonist, but it's for all the other people in your group in your head. Yeah? When you're telling a story, sometimes there's other characters. Not only do you want something, they want something. Yes? Not only do you want something, Ishita, they want something. You wanted to get married. Your mother wanted you to stay home and take care of her. Whatever. I don't know. I'm not making any kind of comment about your mother. But the idea is other people want something. So when you create characters in your story, make sure that they want something. Oftentimes I hear stories and they're like, Mama, why can't I go out? Because you need to stay home and cook. Well, that's okay just to say that, but what does mom really want? You need to stay home and cook, right? Make sure we understand what's their motivation. When we understand their motivation, then we can move on to conflict. Now, I'm going to take this away. Pop quiz. Let's see who was paying attention. There are 4 kinds of conflict. Mayuri, what's one of them? Okay. No. Nice. Give me one kind of conflict. Man versus...
Man.
Good. Man versus man. What is the second one? Deepika. What's another one?
Man versus himself.
Man versus himself. Exactly. And what's a third one? Chandra.
Okay.
Yeah, I think like I already made it a note. Man versus society is one thing.
Man versus man.
Society.
Man versus himself. Man versus
Society.
society. Very good. And what's the fourth
Man
one?
versus nature.
Man versus nature. Now, there is a 5th one that some people talk about, and that's man versus mother-in-law. Okay, so I can tell who's married and who's not married just by who laughed at that. Those who are married, they're like laughing. Those who aren't married, they're like, I don't get it. Yeah. You will one day, and then you're gonna remember Fursey. Okay, so there are 4 basic kinds of conflict. And what you want to do is understand in your story, what conflict are you talking about? What conflict? If you don't even understand the conflict, how are you supposed to get us to understand the conflict? And a lot of times, we don't even understand the conflict within our story and how it changes. So for example, Dad, I want to go and find my own way. I don't want to work for you. So at first, it starts out with man versus man. But then, even when I had the chance to go, I wondered if I should stay and help my parents. It changed, didn't it? It starts out as man versus man, but it became man versus himself. So you can have a multi-layered story. Yes, it makes it interesting because man versus man was part of the status quo. But you discovered through the conflict that it was really man versus himself. And when you beat yourself and mastered yourself, you became a better person. Yes? That's why you have to understand conflict. And you have to understand where that conflict is within your story. Okay, moving forward. The last part that we discussed, we talked about the structure having a story, and the story has a plot, character, conflict, and a pivot point. A pivot point. Thank you, timer. A pivot point is critical. If you take a look at this, you'll see where you have the plot, and you have conflict, and you have character, but the pivot points are where it changes. The pivot points are where it changes. This is status quo. When it goes up, that's a pivot point. When it goes down, that's a pivot point. When it goes up again, that's a pivot point. When it goes down, anytime it makes that shift, that's a pivot point, and you want to make sure your audience gets to that. You want to make sure that your audience sees the pivot point. That's where you want to go, oh, I get it now. Pivot point. Yes, little light bulb goes off. Pivot point. And light bulbs go off not just because I'm bald and there's shiny light on me. Everybody gets a little light bulb going off. Does this make sense? I forgot. Akanksha.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Excellent. So when you have your character, you have to understand, how does the pivot point affect you? What did you discover? How are you different? What have you learned? Yes? When you're talking to your audience, you're showing them, what have I learned? What did I discover? Grandpa, why are you telling me this? Because I want you to know what you should discover about life. Yeah? And then with the conflict, you have to ask yourself some questions as well. How can the audience learn from this conflict? How has the conflict changed? What does the audience need to learn about the conflict? That's an incredibly important piece of a pivot point as it relates to conflict, and that's what makes the story interesting. That's what makes the story interesting. When we were talking about structure, we're only on story, believe it or not. When we were talking about structure, remember we had structure, self, story, sense of humor. Now that I'm on green, I know I got to speed up even faster. Who are you? What is your motivation? We talked about this a little bit. Where are you in the timeline, and why is this important to you? You have to understand yourself. You have to understand yourself when you give a speech. Otherwise, how is the audience supposed to understand? If you use yourself as the basis for story, as Mayuri told us earlier, if you're going to use yourself, then you better understand yourself. Does that make sense, Shazia? You have to understand who you are before you can get your audience to understand who you are. You have to know your own conflict. You have to know where you are in your timeline. You have to know who you are as it pertains to your audience. Are you somebody who is in front of your audience learning? Are you in front of an audience teaching? Those are two different things. Yes? What is your character in front of the audience? Charan, does that make sense? We are different in front of different people. For example, when you're at work, you are one person. A certain personality comes out. When you're at home with your children, you're different. Because you have to have a different place in their life. When you're with your parents or your grandparents, you might be different again. Yeah? So consider, in front of you, that specific audience, who are you? You probably don't talk to your boss the same way you talk to your children. All right, something to consider. Who are you? Self. Next is a sense of humor. Everybody says, oh, I got to make my audience laugh. Why? Why do you need to make your audience laugh? The most important thing is bonding. When we have a sense of humor and we can get our audience to laugh, that means we share. The whole point of a speech is to have a connection. Does this make sense, Vamsi? The whole point of a speech, Prasad, is that we have a connection. Otherwise, why are you talking? Right? If you don't want to connect with me, then why are you talking? Grandpa, why are you telling me this while I'm playing a video game? Right? So, Seshu, we want to make sure that we are making a connection. And the best way to do that is to have a sense of humor. If we're going to make people laugh, we have to find something that is common, something that bonds us together. Like earlier when I made fun of mother-in-laws, the people on the screen that laughed were probably the people who have a mother-in-law. So we have that in common. Those of you who do not have a mother-in-law, you're kind of like, I don't get it. Why is that funny? Yeah. So we have to understand that if you want to make a joke, if you want to connect people through humor, then you have to find something that's more universal. In your stories, find the pieces or discover the pieces. Thank you, Deepika, giving us the hands up. That's great. Find the pieces that are common, universal. And sometimes it's not integral to the point. Sometimes it has nothing to do with the point. It's a side piece. It can also be something that is universal because it's unexpected. If you can say something or bring something up that is completely unexpected, and everybody understands that it is unexpected, then everybody laughs. Several years ago, when I first made it to the World Championship, I was talking about my divorce. And I was talking about the most stressful time in my life and how I wanted to yell, but I couldn't yell because it would scare the cat. Yeah, I read it. So everybody laughed because they're like, that's unexpected. Nobody expected me to not yell because of the cat. Everybody would have expected me to not yell for some other human emotion. Yes? So, whoa, cat. Oh my gosh, come on, man, open a window. So, again, unexpected. Yeah? Unexpected. When you can find something that everyone does not expect, it bonds us. Now we have a shared space, and we do that with a sense of humor. There are other reasons to have a sense of humor, and that's to break the tension. When we were talking about status quo and rising action, in this rising action, you're building tension. Tension. Tension, tension. And sometimes to keep going up, you need to humor and then go up again, and then humor and then go up again, and then humor and then conflict. We want to release the tension so that we can build it up again. Yeah, Animesh is either nodding because he agrees with me or he's like, yeah, baby, we're banging our heads, we're jamming, you know. So we have, he's like, yeah, I'm jamming. He's probably got some Def Leppard or something, I don't know. Rolling Stones on there. So we want to have tension and then release the tension. Tension and then release the tension. That's how we build a speech. We build it through that kind of conflict. We get it going and there's argument, and then we release the tension. And that everybody appreciates that. Everybody enjoys that. Now that's for that kind of speech that might be in a competition. Even when you're doing a workshop, you're leading a workshop, and I know some of you lead workshops, some of you teach. So we want to have tension because it's a mental break. For your audience, it's a little bit of a mental break. I've been talking for 40, or I'm going to be talking for 45 minutes here. If I didn't give you some reason to laugh, you would not like to be here right now. You'd be like, oh my gosh, my brain needs a break. Yeah, too much. I need a break. So you want to create those breaks for your audience. Questions so far? Now here's what I'm going to do, because Animesh, what's up, man?
Yeah. So since you talked about this, breaking the tension with a little bit of, let's say, pointing out something unexpected, I had another idea there. And hear me out. How about we probably point out some sort of irony or contradiction there? Like, will that also do the same thing?
Can you ask me that again? What if you do what?
What if I, let's say, point out some sort of irony in whatever I've said so far, or
Yes.
some sort of contradiction in there, right?
Absolutely.
So will that do the job as well?
Sure.
That's what
Well, we don't know if it's going to do the job. You may have to do it twice, but definitely that's a step towards a piece of humor. Irony is good. People like to laugh at that too. Like when you say something and it's the exact opposite meaning. Absolutely. Yeah, that's great. What I'm going to do next is I'm going to review. I know we went through a lot of details and I went through very quickly, and you may not have had a chance to do a screenshot. So I'm going to go through my slides very quickly. And what I want to do is ask you, do you have a question about that slide? And if you have a question about that particular slide, just go, whoa, stop, question. Yeah? Okay, so here we go. Here's the first one. Crafting speeches, 4 S's. Structure, yourself, story, sense of humor. In the structure, you can have 1, 2, or 3. Now you can have many, but this is for a basic 5 to 7 minute speech. The first one, a structure of 1, is a single story. Yeah, it's a single story. 2. Structure 2. Oh, there's a hand up. Yes, Irene.
I have a question. Maybe it's not related specifically to the structure 1 or 3. Let's say we are in a story about something that is happening now in the present. And as we're building up the tension, the lesson that we learn or the pivot is from the past. It's from something that we remember in the past. How do we integrate that in our structure?
That's a tricky one. And that's a really tricky one, because in the audience's mind, they're wondering, why didn't you learn this before? So the way you have to structure that is that it may have been said in the past under a certain understanding. Maybe it wasn't a learning opportunity. It was just something that was understood. And then now in the present, aha, I get it. Yeah, because sometimes we're told things, but we don't get it. Grandpa, why are you telling me this? Really? That doesn't matter to me. I'm going back to my video game. And then 10 years later,
yeah,
Pa, I'm really glad you said that. I get it now.
So we should build the past first and then the present, or the present and we remember the past, the lesson of the past.
If it's a chronological situation, then do the past first. It is possible. It is possible to do something that goes back. It's a very advanced way of storytelling, and you got to have a pretty sharp audience. Otherwise, they're going to go, I don't get it. And you have to be very secure with yourself on how you talk on the stage, the past and then the future, or the past and then the present. So it's perfectly okay. It's rare because most audience cannot grasp it, and it's rare because most people cannot tell it.
Mm.
If you go with chronological, there are different structures again, but these are just basic, the 1, the 2, the 3. Does that make sense? Good question. Ishita, did you have a question?
Yes, I did. Can you hear me?
Yes.
So my question is, you're saying about the structure of one, where you're telling one story. What if I have multiple stories on the same topic? Can that be also integrated in my structure?
I would say that becomes multiple stories. That could be 2 stories or even 3 stories.
Or like a series of
You have to be aware of
anecdotes?
it.
A series of anecdotes, if I have, that have happened to me and I've still not learned the lesson, and finally something happens and then I open my eyes, sort of story.
Then that's multiple stories. Then that almost becomes like structure 3. You have your main point, but then it's brought up in 3 different anecdotes, as opposed to dividing a piece of food or sports into 3. What you're talking about is, here's my main idea. Here's my main idea. And here's the first example, the second example, the third example.
Thank you.
Good question. Mayuri?
Yeah, hi, Fursey. So I have a question. When a little while ago you were talking about how important it is to keep, the self. There's a structure, there's a self, there's a story, and then there's of course the sense of humor that you need to add. Now, what if I do not really take? I mean, the story, the pivot point is not really mine. It's not really self, but it is someone else closely associated with me, perhaps, and I use that in my story. How effective would that be? It is not really the self, but however, it is impactful. I mean, the whole.
It can be very powerful. It can be very powerful. Now, here's the thing. A lot of us have in mind the Toastmaster 5 to 7 minute competition speech, right? But realize that most of us are going to speak in so many other settings.
Correct.
And you can tell a story about what somebody else went through, because it's still just as important. Or you could tell a story that comes from our myth, right? We all have some shared myths. Those of you from one part of the country or one country probably have characters built up over a treasure of stories that we may have learned as children, fables. And so you can tell that story. And a lot of politicians will do this. When they're trying to say, this is why we need to raise taxes, or this is why we need to be kind to our parents. There once was a young girl, and da 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 da. So I'm going to tell the story about the girl. It has nothing to do with me. It has to do with a girl. But that's the lesson to be learned. Yeah. So
the level of impact, would it be the same if it was me, myself, having lived through that, or the narration of someone else having lived through the same thing and me narrating it during the course of my speech?
Personal impact is always stronger.
Is stronger.
Yep. If it happens to you, it's always better.
Because the audience then feels that, okay, this person has a direct connect with whatever they've gone through.
Yes. And you can bring up more direct emotions.
Right. Okay.
But a lot of times if we create a fable or we go off of some movie, then we're kind of like, well, that's really someone else's story. Why don't you tell us something that's more important?
And so that is also a see-through. The audience sees through it that this is not really their story. It is something taken off. Yeah.
Yeah, they feel it. They feel it more than they see it. But again, sometimes in a business setting, those fables, those stories that come from not necessarily history, but they come from our storytelling history. Yes. And I wish I knew more about the Indian culture and understand, be able to bring out books, the Bible or the Shakespeare or, but if you can figure out what shared document people have, then you pinpoint it and talk about it. Like if I go to Japan to give a speech, I'm going to find a story from Japanese culture. Yeah, if I'm gonna go to the Philippines and give a speech, I'm gonna find something out of Filipino history and talk about that. Even if I don't know it well, I want to reach my audience, so it's important that my audience gets it.
Correct. And that's where you talked about the connect. So you connect more when you speak a language of their own. Correct. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. I see Ishita has raised her hand.
Yeah,
Ishita,
but we're ignoring
Ishita,
her.
please.
We're ignoring her. No, yeah, go ahead. What's up, Ishta?
So, does every speech need to have a story? For example, if I give an informative speech or
Nope. Not every speech needs to have a story. If you were in front of your boss trying to describe the data that you have pulled, you don't necessarily need a story. And I'd like to believe that who I'm talking to here, I want to help you in your life outside of the Toastmasters competition, right? You got so many other things that you've got to do. But I will tell you this. I personally believe, and I have to say this because other people are going to tell you the opposite. I do not think there is such a thing as an informative speech. Like, whoa, Fursey, the first thing we learned in Toastmasters is an informative speech, there's a persuasive speech, there's an inspirational speech. Yeah, whatever. Sure, give an informative speech, see how many people are interested.
okay.
Right? Listen, even if all you're doing, Irene, is telling your boss data, don't you still want your boss to believe you? Not your coworker who's trying to get your job. So you're still trying to persuade them. You're still trying to pick the best data and persuade them. If you're trying to sell something, you better pick the better data that makes you look good, makes your product look like the best. You're trying to persuade them. No such thing as an informative speech. We learned that as children the first time we ever did something wrong and we had to tell our parents. They go, why did you do that? Or what happened? You're like, oh, yeah. Yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
You bet. I think we got time for maybe one question. If it's
Yes.
Animesh?
Animesh, I think, had raised his hand, but he's lowered it again. So I think I'll just ask you one last question before we close this particular session. When we talk of, in the context, of course, of Toastmasters, we are time bound a little bit. Let's say 5 to 7 minutes for our humorous speech contest, which is currently in season right now. When we sit down to craft a speech, like you said, think of the main content first and then build around the introduction or the conclusion, put in the 3 stories. How much of an attention should one give to time, and how much to give to each of those 3 evidences in a framework of 5 to 7 minutes?
District Director Mayuri, you know that you're asking a question about time to a guy who went overtime, right?
I did not want to bring that up, but
you want to budget your time, and you want to, that's partially why I'm used to the green, yellow, red. Listen, when you see the red light, you got to clamp it down. You should budget, you test it out, and you should budget your time. It just depends. You know, my mistake, I made 3 big mistakes on why I went overtime. If I had changed any one of the 3, it would have been better. 1, I budgeted my time for laughing for audiences in my practice, which were 20 or 30 people, not 1,700 people. 1,700 people.
It takes away
extended
time.
line.
Yes.
Absolutely. The second thing was I added lines back in. I tried to build on that audience and I added lines back in that I'd previously cut. So that was another, don't do that, Fursey. And the third thing is, once I saw red, I thought I had this much time. I need to force myself, Fursey, you're on red, shut it down. But I thought I was like a gymnastics where you got to stick the landing. I should have just shut it down. So I think you budget enough time and you're ready to shut it down. You have to be ready in your mind to squeeze it down. One of the things that I teach people when they're storytelling, if you tell a story in 1 minute, and that's a good chunk of time, it's very hard for people to sit through more than 1 minute story.
Yeah.
Toastmasters is not reality. Toastmasters is not reality because we're all very kind, we're all very positive, and we're all going to sit there very quietly and listen. Real life does not. Your boss will find something else in a heartbeat. So you have to realize 1 minute and then practice telling that in 30 seconds. Then try telling it in 15 seconds. Can you tell the story in 15 seconds? For example, a job interview. And then try telling the story in 5 minutes. Instead of 1 minute, 5 minutes, because you may want to use it as a keynote. Right? So take your story and make it an accordion. And same thing with laughter. Be ready to shut it down. Be ready to move forward. Be ready to speak faster.
I think thank you so much for sharing that, because I think that's a very big learning and very important. When we deliver speeches in our clubs, there are 20 members. And so audience reaction is also as much. But when it's a larger gathering, we do not really count for it while we are practicing. And I've seen that happen in our district contests too. So I think that's a very big learning that our members will take away. But thank you for the entire session, Fursey. There have been so many takeaways. Our members have been busy taking notes, and thank you so much for that. We'll take a very quick break for just 7 minutes. We'll be back at 1 p.m. and then we'll switch to the evaluation sessions. Okay. I request all the audience members. Sorry?
You have snacks? Well,
yeah, yes, virtual ones for everybody.
come on, you gotta have food. Okay,
Yes.
thank you.
Yeah, and we'll see in one. Fursey, I would like you to just check the chat options now if you're able to share it with everybody in the meanwhile. And I think Charan would like to probably just put on some music for the next 5 minutes.
Yes. I'm not sure how many of you people are going to like it, but I'm still going to play it. Okay.
No? Okay, I think
Mighty over to you.
Thank you so much, Charan, for that music. I started actually enjoying it. It was nice. Welcome back, our audience members, and I hope you've had a quick grab. So you've grabbed something. Now we move to the second half of our training session with the amazing Fursey, and I'm still waiting to learn how I can transition from speeches to evaluations. And I know how important evaluations are. They have a huge impact. They have had a huge impact in my life. I've changed a lot, learning the skill that came to me thanks to Toastmasters. So I think I would like to learn even much more. How can we give good evaluations to everybody who is delivering a speech and in different contexts? So thank you so much once again, Fursey, and over to you with evaluations.
Thank you very much, Mayuri. Here we go, evaluations. What does being an evaluator mean? What does it mean to evaluate someone? We all do it. We know we have to, that's part of Toastmasters. And for some and for many, it's the most important part because it's how we get better. So what is the meaning of being an evaluator?
Certainly not judging, which I learned here at Toastmasters.
Yeah. Yeah. Any thoughts? What is your perspective on evaluating?
To help other person improve.
To help other person improve. Thank you. Anybody else?
To assess
It's
something.
actually
Irene?
it's actually giving some specific point to serve the speaker and help them to improve. But it's actually serving them.
Yes, it is. It is serving them. Good. Charan?
I believe it is giving your assessment, what you think is right, what you think is wrong in whatever gets presented.
Okay, good. Bhaskar or Vishnu, your thoughts? Or Fancy, your thoughts? What does it mean to evaluate? What is your personal perspective on evaluating somebody?
I really think that evaluation is a process that you can organize your ideas and test how much you have learned about the speech, and also train your logic and give others about your perspectives.
Excellent. Thank you, Fancy. I appreciate that. You know, the word that you used that I really like was process. Yeah, it's a process. And I think oftentimes we forget that. We look at a speech and think, oh, good. Here's my evaluation. It is the final assessment. Final, it's done. Why? Because usually, once somebody in your club has done a speech, they never look at it again. right? They don't look at the speech again. They're done. That's one thing about the contest that's different. In a contest, you're saying, let's improve because it's going to go again. Yes, it's a process. The other aspect of that is the person. And many of you talked about it. Many of you talked about the individual, how we help the individual. The speech may be done, but the individual is continuing. Ritvika? Ritvika? Would you like to share something? You have a hand up?
It's by mistake.
Okay. You can come back to that if you want. Evaluate. And there's so many different ways to rhyme this word. You know, as a presenter, sometimes you come up with overly rhymed stuff just because people got to remember it. Evaluations or coaching. In some clubs, they call it coaching as opposed to evaluating. They find that to be a more supportive word. Evaluate to celebrate. Evaluate to elevate. Evaluate to stimulate. A lot of people will talk about elevate. We're going to elevate somebody. But I think sometimes what we want to remember is that we have to celebrate. We first have to celebrate what they've done. You know, it's interesting. I hear people do this. They give an evaluation and they first talk about the good things, right? They go, okay, there's this good, this good, this good, this good, this good. Now I'm going to help you grow. And then they launch into all the negatives. Why do you think that people can only grow from negative? Right? Why? Can't we learn from positive? Isn't that the whole point of Toastmasters? That we learn from a positive environment? So we have to be able to tell people what they do well. Shuisin? Shuisin, did you want to say something?
Oh, no.
Oh,
no.
okay.
I didn't raise my hand, sorry.
No problem. So that's why I put evaluate, to celebrate, to elevate, and then to stimulate. Because one thing we have to remember is we have to try to give them ideas to see what could work. Meaning you don't have to have all the answers. Chandra, you don't have to have all the answers. Shazia, you don't have to have all the answers. You're not expected to have the answer. But maybe you can give them something to think about. Yeah, give them something to wonder about. If not for the speech in Toastmasters, then at the very least, for something that happens on in real life. Because remember, ladies and gentlemen, if you don't remember anything else from today besides mother-in-law jokes, remember this. Nobody, not a single person, not even Lakshmi, nobody joined Toastmasters to increase DCP points. Nobody. Okay? When I ask you, why'd you join Toastmasters? Not a single one of you goes, well, I wanted to increase DCP points. No! You joined Toastmasters because in your real life, outside of this green box, in real life, there's something you need to get done. And you wanted Toastmasters' help to get that done. So when we give feedback, we can give them something to chew on for whatever's going on out there. When you ask somebody about what they want to get out of the speech, when you're about to evaluate someone and you contact them, which you should, and you go, hey, tell me about yourself. One of the questions should be, what is it that you want to get out of this speech outside of Toastmasters? It should not have anything to do with the project. Sure, you should do something with the project, but I want to know what you need from me today that can help you tomorrow in your real life. I think each of us can do that. We don't have to be experts. Does that make sense, Rajnikant? We can help each other. You can teach me something about how to be with my children, how to do with my boss, how to help make a sale, right? You can give me feedback on something that helps me outside of this Toastmaster box that I'm in. So stimulate thinking. You could even say something like, hey, listen, I had this thought about how you could work this into your job. I know you're starting a new company. I know you're about to go make a pitch. I know you're having trouble with some of your family members because they all came in from a different town. And why don't you call me and we'll talk about it? Yeah, stimulate. Evaluate. Celebrate. What did they do well? Elevate how the speaker will grow, and then how to excite them. You know, Toastmasters is having this problem where members are quitting, right? Isn't that right, Mayuri? That's the whole point, right? We are losing people. We are losing members. You think we'd lose as many if part of the focus of evaluations was to stimulate? Stimulate people. Get them excited about doing the speech, the next speech. Get them excited about coming to the next meeting because somebody at that meeting cares about them. Not just their speaking skills, but somebody cares about them and took enough time to be interested in your life. I'm telling you, if every one of us did that, people would never leave. Yeah? So that's why I think it's important to celebrate, to elevate, and to stimulate. The next part of evaluation is making sure that we're really seeing what we need to see. Sometimes we go into an evaluation and we're not looking clearly. So tell me, what do you see?
Frowning and bad sign.
Sorry?
He's like saying something bad.
How do you know?
Because of his mouth and his eyes and eyebrow and his finger.
Okay, tell me about his eyebrows. What are his eyebrows doing?
His eyebrows are a little bit frowning. That's why.
Okay. What are his fingers doing?
He's flipping the bird.
Is he? How do you know that?
I mean, that is what I can make out of the picture. I might be wrong.
He's got his hand in a position with one finger up, right? So one of the things that we want to do as evaluators, and one of the things that I want you to do today, is to see things from a different point of view. To understand that we can see things from different point of view. I want you to look at what I give you today and say, oh, that's a different way to look at it. You know, this is one way to look at it, and you think there's something there in front of you, and be able to come around and see it from a completely different point of view. Yes? All right. So here's the next picture. Are you sure that he's flipping these people the bird? Picture one. Picture two. Are we really seeing the whole picture? Are we really seeing the whole picture? As we give people our attention, right? When we give people our attention and we're watching them and listening to them, we want to make sure that we're seeing it from all different points of view. Meaning, they could be giving a speech in one direction. We have to be able to almost walk around and see it from a different point of view. Let's see their speech not just as a project. Let's see their speech as a building block in their work. Let's see their speech in perspective of somebody who's new to Toastmasters or somebody who's a veteran in Toastmasters. Let's see it in the perspective of, you know, Mayuri, I've had a chance in this club with you. I've had a chance to see 4 or 5 your speeches. This one, though, I think is different because, right? I'm not just looking at the speech as a singleton. I'm looking at the speech as part of a series of speeches that I've seen the growth, or I've seen a decline, or I've seen you use the same story over and over. Is that bad that you use the same story over and over? No, because I think every time you use it, you pull a different universal meaning out of it. And that's brilliant, right? We have to be able to give people the kind of feedback that shows that I'm seeing you as a whole person. I'm able to walk around you. It's a challenge. It's a challenge. So here's the first challenge I have for you. This is page 1 of the evaluation form. Yes? We're using Icebreaker, and all of you can use the downloaded clip that I think Charan sent out. Thank you very much. So this is page 1. Now in page 1, it looks very simple. General comments you excelled at, you may want to work on, you may want to challenge yourself. Here's where I would give those of you who are a little bit more experienced something to think about, a different way to look at it. Something you did well. I would say this is your way of communicating to the speaker, do this again. Grow. You did this well, keep doing it, go further with it. Yes? It's something that they can do on the very next speech. If they did something well, then that means they've proven they can do it, and they can do it on the very next speech. So within the next 1 to 3 speeches, they can do this, and they're actually going to get better. Now, the second part to this is you may want to work on. One way to look at this is something that could take you 2 to 5 speeches. You can see growth in the next 2 to 5 speeches by working on these elements. It could be something that they already do well, but keep working on it. It could be something that they need to tweak. And then the third one, the challenge. I challenge you to do this. This might be something, Irene, that could take them 10 speeches to get better at. We have to understand that some things take longer. Does that make sense, Prasad? We can't expect people to just turn and do something better in the next speech. It could take 5 to 10 speeches. You're like, what on earth could take 10 speeches, Praveen? Well, Vishnu, let's work on vocal resonance. Vocal resonance could take you months, if not years. It took me years. Yeah. Humor. Humor may not happen immediately. It could take you 10 speeches to really develop it. So we challenge people with that. Or here's another one. I challenge you to use this technique of storytelling, or this technique of jokes, or this technique of gestures. I challenge you to try it at your next meeting with your boss. I challenge you. I want to stimulate you. Yes? I don't want to just elevate. I want to stimulate. I want to light that rocket and see how far it shoots. I want to light that rocket and see just go right over the little form. Okay? Let's consider that. So that's page 1. Now here's page 2. Did you notice that you give a score of 1 to 5? You give a score of 1 to 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now here's why I have to be so pedantic about this. I know some of you right now, Vishnu, you're looking at me going, Fursey, we know that. We know it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But most people don't think about that. Think about this. It says vocal variety. Most people think it's binary. You had it, you don't got it, right? You got volume, you don't got volume. Really? How am I supposed to learn from that? how can I really learn just by you saying you don't got it? You don't have vocal variety. Instead, rate it. What does it take to get from a 1 to a 2? Look at it and ask yourself, what is it really going to take to get from a 3 to a 4? Now, this is what I mean. It's on page 3. How many of you know, raise your hand either digitally or real hand, how many of you know there's a page 3 to the evaluations? How many people know there's a page 3 to the evaluations? Come on. Uh-huh. Yeah. Most people don't understand there's a page 3. Why? Because there's nothing to fill out on it. They're like, why do I need to look at it? There's nothing to fill out. But man, there are so many good answers on page 3. So many good answers. It gives you the words you need. Most people do not have the vocabulary to help someone get from a 3 to a 4. They simply tell you that you got it or don't got it. They don't really say, in your vocal variety, I noticed that on the things that you said from your life story, you had very good vocal variety. I'd say a 4 because I could feel the emotion. But when you were explaining facts and figures, you lost vocal variety. And it was kind of like at a 1 or a 2. So I would use the same intentionality, the same joy and emotion on one part of your speech and use it on the facts and figures. Wow. Yeah. On page 3, they use the word engage a lot. A lot. But are we really looking at how people are engaging the audience? Think about gestures. We talk about gestures. Take a look at this. Number 1 uses very distracting gestures or no gestures. Number 5 fully integrates physical gestures with the content to deliver exemplary speech. What do you mean? Fully integrates. What do you mean fully integrate? What do we really mean by a good gesture? If I do this, is that a good gesture? If I go through the whole script doing this, is that good? I'm gesturing. I got my hands off the lectern. I've actually moved out from behind the lectern, and now I'm doing this. Well, the problem with that is that it doesn't really communicate anything. Hands up, palms up, that usually means universally, I don't got anything. Right? I have nothing. What's the answer? I don't know. I got nothing. So why would you want to deliver an entire speech of I got nothing? Ladies and gentlemen, I'm here to inspire you to live your life to the fullest. With what? Our company is going to be great. Really? Because it doesn't look like it. You know what I call this, Shazia? I call this forklift. Beep, 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 beep. I am here to deliver a message. Forklift. That's what this is. Our elbows are in by our body and we're just doing this. Our elbows are in because we're scared. We're scared to be vulnerable. We're scared to open up. But you'll find that once you move your elbows away from your body, our gestures got huge. Couldn't you give that feedback to a speaker? You can go from level 3 to level 4 if you would simply move your elbows away from your torso. You could get from a 3 to a 4 by understanding that there's a break right here at your wrist so that your gestures don't have to be like a windshield wiper. Honey, I think it's raining harder. Come on. You like that gesture? It's the wiper gesture. No. Look, my wrist can bend. Ooh, I don't have to be a great dancer like Mayuri. Have you seen her dance? She's on YouTube. It's great. Okay, so here's the, she's like, I hate this guy. So what you can simply bend at the wrist and all of a sudden there's flexibility. You can bend at your fingers. There's flexibility. Now you don't need to go to Hawaii and start to You know what I mean? You don't have to do it. You can just understand it. Look at that. You can tell someone all your gestures were of the same time. All your gestures are like this. 1,000, 2 1,000, 1,000. Every gesture, 1,000. What happens if your gesture was like 1, 2, 3? What if you took 3 seconds to gesture? You know, I had that gesture in my semi-final speech. I talked about my mother, and then I talked about me remembering something, realizing something, and I went, oh, I understand. I'll never do that again, Mom. All it took was for me to slow my hands down. I'm looking at it from a different point of view, right? Can we see things from a completely different point of view and understand that I can control the duration of my speech? I can move from one side of my body to the other. Not just, you need to increase your gestures. Really? Which gestures? How about the ones that point behind me? Because most people don't think they can gesture behind them. They can only gesture between the shoulders and in front of them. You can gesture to the behind. You can gesture to the side. You can even have your hands cross your body. Those are the little elements that we can all see better in speeches. Understand what they really need to do from level 3 to level 4. To get from level 1 to level 5, you can just go improve, but to get from 3 to 4, that's the hard part. Can we help? Can we elevate our speakers to get from 3 to 4? Think about interest. Interest fully engages the audience with exemplary, well-constructed content. Well-constructed content. Now, Irene was talking about this earlier. Does it have to be in that chronological order? Absolutely not. You have to consider what works and what doesn't work, because we can change the structure to engage the audience, to pull them in. If somebody only tells it in chronological order, you got to understand, we're going to fall asleep. Nothing is almost more boring than chronological order because our mind already starts to turn off. So we have to find a different way. Audience awareness. Do you understand what your audience is doing? Can you see your audience? Can you see them nod? Can you react to it? Can you react to it? Like look at them and go, mm-hmm. And then repeat a word, even repeat a line. If a line you have gets somebody to laugh, can you say it again? Right? So this is the kind of feedback that we can give each other. This is the kind of feedback that we can give each other. I noticed that your head was tilting. Use that. Use that. Affect it. These are all the little details that we find in page 3. How to engage your audience. Where are your eyes? Now, are your eyes only pointing, like I know right now we're on Zoom, so we're here, but you can say, I see you, and you're always looking at the front of the room. I think you can get better just by looking at the back of the room and sustaining your eye focus for just 2 seconds. 1, 2. Because sometimes I see speakers do this. Okay, and now I'm going to talk about my speech, and I'm kind of doing this, and I'm kind of doing that. And oh my gosh, they're like a sprinkler. Focus, hold it. Good. Focus, hold it. Good. We can give that kind of feedback. Right? We can give that kind of feedback. We can engage. We can nod our heads. When you see a head nod, you nod back. You can tell a speaker that. When you see somebody and they're laughing at something you said, or they're agreeing with the statistics, you know, our numbers are not that good. Yeah, right. We need to do something about it. We can apply this to work very easily. This department has gone up and it's doing really well. That's right. It's your department. Great job. You can do that. You can tell someone how they can improve by giving them those little tips. The most important thing, like I said, is that you have to understand why they are speaking. Can we help each other? Can we stimulate each other by helping someone understand why they are in Toastmasters and how to help them outside of Toastmasters? There was this one person I was evaluating. He wasn't even in my club. I was just on Zoom visiting clubs and they asked me to come in. So I'm evaluating someone I don't know. But I happened to send him an email 2 days before, and I just said simply, hey, what are you going to do outside of Toastmasters? He goes, well, I'm trying to get a job as a manager. Like, I'm a shift leader. I want to be a manager. So he goes and talks about running. His speech was all about how he likes to jog. He's running. And he talks about the shoes. And that's okay. But then in my feedback to him, I said, I would want you to talk about in your speech the importance of mental focus or the importance of having good energy, because that's what you're going to need to be a manager. You're going to encourage people to have that mental focus. You're going to encourage people to take care of themselves. When you can show interest in others as a manager, as a leader, you increase engagement of the people that work with you. Why not? It immediately applies to the people outside of Toastmasters. So you have to know what their purpose is. At this point in time, Mayuri, with your permission, I'm going to bring in a friend of mine. He's going to give a speech, and all of you are going to evaluate my friend, okay? But here's the thing. He's only going to speak for about 1.5 minutes, because that's all you need to see. And you are just going to pick one of the elements. Pick one of the elements and pick a number. All right, pick 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, whether you're doing gestures or eye focus or vocal variety. Pick just one. I don't need you to show me, I have 10 years of experience. No, we don't have that much time. Pick just one element, rate it, and give feedback. Give feedback to my friend. My friend Tom is going to come in. He's going to speak. Now, Tom joined Toastmasters because he recently started up a restaurant. He recently started up a restaurant, and he's a cook, all right? But now he has to go out front and talk to customers. So he needs to learn how to do that, yeah? So I'm going to bring my friend Tom in here, and I would like for you to pick one element. Does that make sense? Don't try to grade the whole thing. So go into this thinking, I'm looking at gestures, or I'm looking at vocal variety, or I'm looking at structure, or I'm looking at eye focus. Just one. All right? Everybody ready? Everybody know what to do? Okay, this is my friend Tom Morrow. Cool name, huh? Ladies and gentlemen, would you please put your hands together, give him a big Toastmaster welcome to my friend Tom Morrow. Tom, come on in. Hello? Hello, Toastmasters. Thank you for letting me speak. My name's Tom Morrow. Yes, I know it's a funny name. My mother gave me a really funny name. I'm here. I joined Toastmasters because I want to get better at speaking, because I just started a restaurant, and normally I just like to be in the back cooking, but now I got to go out and talk to customers, and I'm kind of scared to talk to customers, so I got to do that. It's a really cool restaurant. What happened was my mother, she's passed away now. She's gone, but she was a great cook. And I know she's a good cook because all my friends would come over and eat food at our house and think she was great. So I started up this restaurant because it has all her recipes. So I'm really glad that I could serve her food again and let people enjoy her food for her whole life. So thank you very much. I appreciate it. My name's Tom. Thank you. All right, way to go, Tom. That's good. That's good. Let's give it up for Tom Morrow. Excellent. Okay. Who wants to evaluate Tom? Remember, you just have to do one of the elements, rate it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. How are you going to stimulate? How are you going to elevate? Right? How are we going to grow Tom? Tom comes in here needing a lot of help. How are we going to celebrate, elevate, and stimulate Tom? Shazia? Shazia?
Yes.
Okay, you only need to go for about a minute, all right? Go ahead.
Hello, Tom. It was a nice speech. So I was looking at your gestures, and I have very little or small feedback, so which you can use in your next speech. Firstly, your entry was a little dull. I wish you worked on your entry. Make a strong entry, make a powerful exit, so that we remember what you told us. You have a good story, so I would want you to work on your gestures in a way that you keep your back straight. I felt your shoulders were slightly slumped. So even though you had a good story, we couldn't get that effect. And I can see that you had only one hand movement. Try to use both hands. And also, you kept looking down. I wish you would look at us so that we could connect to your story better. So that's my feedback, Tom. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you, Shazia. Ishita?
Hi, Tom. Most of the points were already covered by Sashia. I also had picked gestures as my element to evaluate. First of all, congratulations on opening your restaurant. It takes guts to start something on your own, and I applaud you for that. And coming out upfront to greet your customers, I say that you have definitely come forward in your speaking abilities, and I felt that your gestures come out of a place of insecurity or not feeling confident in yourself. And I would encourage you to just feel confident about yourself and open up your arms and use both arms when you speak to your customers. The customer will relate to you much better when you do so. That's rest everything which I just said.
Woo, very good. Nice job. Now, some of the things that the two of you did, you both mentioned the fact that he wants to open up a restaurant. That's great. And you talked about, you know, the importance of his mission, right? So I thought you did that really well. Yeah, I think you're able to analyze. I think both of you saw exactly what I wanted you to see in Tom. The one-handed gesture, the looking down. I think all of that works. The back, you saw that. Fantastic. So your analytical sense is very good. So let me ask you a question. Why? Why would he need to improve these things? What would he do in a real life situation with two hands? What would he need to do in a real life situation, his real life situation, with his eyes or his back? Would you have an answer for that? Could you give him a specific application? I picked the restaurant because I figure most of us have been in a restaurant, right? We all kind of been in a restaurant. We kind of know what's going on there. What would how would he apply this information that you've given him?
So the back, having an erect back while talking to a person shows confidence and assurance in yourself. So that may not directly apply to a particular scenario, but overall, when you are not having you have an open body gesture, and that exudes confidence, and that portrays to the customer or his employees that the boss is the boss and he knows what he's doing. So in overall day-to-day language, that can be the message. And having both hands may not be necessary in every situation. One hand also can work. Yeah,
okay.
That's my
good
observation.
Yeah. Thank you. Deepika, your thoughts?
Yes. Now he will be speaking to the customers. He will be having a direct interaction with people. And if he doesn't seem very confident, and if he's not someone who speaks very confidently, then why people will believe him or why people will come to his restaurant? And that is the thing which I would like to highlight.
Excellent. Very good. What we're starting to see here are ways that we can apply the information, right? You've done your job to analyze, you're giving them advice, and now we're going further by saying, here's where you can apply. Let me go Shazia and then Chandra.
Maybe in a real life situation where he can use both his hands is when he can maybe show around his restaurant. This is my restaurant. I have made it for my mom. And then maybe he can serve something while talking to them. So he can use both his hands. And maybe he can shake hands with them. And that way he could use both his hands. He
Good.
could push them inside. He could hold the shoulders and assure them inside, please come in. This is my restaurant. This is how I.
Good. Thank you. Chandra?
Yeah, I have a different perspective, like which I noticed is the interest is what I focused on because it was quite interesting to me, because it is his mother's recipes which he wanted to bring it to the audience. Like when that is what more connected for me, and I felt there is a genuinity in his wish of opening the restaurant. That's what like more connected for me. However, the other thing like what is important is I'm able to grab his interest in that, but the comfort level coming to that, he's not a comfortable speaker. So I rated like say on second because of he did not structure that. Had the speech been structured and then added this one, it would have been elevated is what I felt Fursey. Yeah.
Chandra, I think you hit some really good things there. I like that. Well, thanks for the rating too. I forgot I was going to ask the other two ladies about what their rating was, but thank you for rating it at 2. I appreciate that. Chandra, is there any particular point that he should consider? How can he improve? Because we can say be more confident, but you know, it's hard when you're lacking confidence how to have confidence, right? So do you have any tips for him? And you may not, but do you?
Yeah, yes, Fursey. Like currently, like I felt on the interest level, I rated him on 3, and only for the comfort level, like see, like I rated as 2. One suggestion like which I would be rating for the speaker will be, he can structure the speech, introducing himself and add about his mother and how the friends used to visit, and eventually like can try to add. That's how like but the restaurant is being opened, and that's what like I'm looking for to take my mother's recipes. And he could have summarized, which would have been more connected to the audience. And since he is talking about his personal story, like adding this structure will bring in that confidence for him to explain, like while the speaker is delivering the speech. That's what I felt as a suggestion.
Nice. You know, I didn't think about this before, and a lot of people don't choose, when I do this topic, a lot of people don't choose interest. So thank you for your courage, Chandra, in picking interest and that sense of comfortableness. One thought would be, if he's uncomfortable or lacks confidence, tell me something. What should he have confidence in? What do you think he probably does have confidence in?
Yeah, one confidence is his drive for starting the business and taking his mother's recipes to everyone. That is
Right.
absolutely
Right. Does that make sense to everyone? What I'm getting at here is he can take the confidence that he has in the recipe, because he must have confidence in the recipe, right? Or he never would have started up the restaurant. He must love his mother if he was to dedicate this restaurant to her. So we take that confidence and we say to him, now, whatever you feel when you talk about your mother, transfer it to when you're talking about your audience. Let the audience know how much you love your mother. Tell them when you talk about your friends coming over, what dish did they love the most? Oh, they like the chicken the most. Then convey that to your audience. Oh, you should order the chicken. It's very good. Right? So we can start to help. Now, is this a lot of work? Yeah, it's a lot of work. But then again, that's what we're here to do, right? We're here to help each other grow. I just saw the red, and I'm sure I'm way past red, because you know me, I'm always going overtime. So thank you all very much. I appreciate your questions. I appreciate you letting me come in here and speak and give you all kinds of stuff. Some people ask me about my contact information, and you can certainly find me at Gotuaco F or Fursey Gotuaco, but some of you are also in a group with me. Who here is in the WhatsApp group with me? And what we do is we do table topics. So if you're interested in joining, just scan the code. It's free. It's a completely free group, but we give a lot of advice there. We post topics every day, and you can speak as often as you like, giving table topic speeches or any length of speech, and you can even give evaluations. I believe that the more evaluations you can give, the better the speaker you will be. The more evaluations you give, the better the speaker you'll be, because you're used to identifying things, right? You're used to seeing things from the audience point of view. So feel free to join us. It's on WhatsApp. It's free. We have a good time in there. I believe that's all I've got. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Back to you, Madam Toastmaster.
Thank you. That was a powerful session. Trust me, Fursey. Evaluations and going on a slightly different, when you said about, can we look at it a list? I mean, is there a different way to look at it? And then also talking about first in your last example as well with Tom Morrow. So first you celebrate him, then you elevate him, and then finally towards the end you stimulate him. I mean, I couldn't have been more impressed with the evaluation techniques that you've given us. Absolutely brilliant. And especially, I mean, I know we have a PDF. We all know we have a PDF. It runs into 3 pages. But how many of us actually go dig deep into the last page and use those 1, 2, 3, 4, 5? And moreover, when you talked about vocal variety on a scale of 1 to 3, you're at 3 and done. But that's not what it is. You could be a 5 at one point and a 3 at another. That's how beautifully you explained. I think my evaluations from now on are going to be much longer than what they are now. And I hope that they end up helping the speaker, actually. You were saying something.
Yeah, just 5 seconds. One more thing on page 3. Once it's printed out, you can just circle it.
Yes.
Page 3, the particular element or word that you think is critical, circle it, and then give it to the target speaker. Now they have your notes. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So I think we do have time for about a few questions. So I'll take the first one, but if there is someone else who would like to, I see a hand raised already. Akanksha is already ready to ask questions. Akanksha, go ahead. I'll take mine later.
Yeah, thank you so much, Mayuri. So hi, Fursey. Just one question I had. So we do come across certain speeches where we have a structure altogether. We don't have a story. We don't have a conclusion or an introduction. But still, we do have to judge on that basis. And how to start our evaluation? Yeah, how to start an evaluation on that basis? See, we do have a lot of feedback to give them. But as a positive note, we always start telling about the good points that we come across in the speech. So while we have so many feedbacks to give in that scenarios, what are the things that we can give, like how to start our own feedback to give? Like these things were actually good, but you can work on these later. So first we always start with a positive note. But when we are coming across these kind of speeches, we don't really at that point of time, we don't really have something to give back. Like, okay, these things were actually good. So how do we come across that?
I got you. So there's a couple of lessons involved here, and I forgot to mention them. 1, you don't have to say everything. Like I give my written notes. Well, even if when I do it on Zoom, I will email the person all my written notes. The first page is everything I wrote. Then after that, I give what I'm going to actually say in the 3.5-minute evaluation. So you don't have to squeeze everything in. So all the negative things, we may not want to mention all of them. They'll see it in writing later on. They'll figure it out. But right then and there, what you want to do is be as analytical about what they do well as you are what they need to improve. So for example, I appreciate you being here today. Thank you for sharing your story. Thank you for being vulnerable. Thank you for giving us all those events in your life. You're not telling him, oh my gosh, you gave us a whole bunch of stuff and there was no shape or form to it. It's like drinking out of a fire hydrant. You gave us all that really good information. You shared your life with us. And that's the most important thing. And you can tell them why it's important. It's important to share your life because ultimately when you're making a sale with a customer, they're not buying the product, they're buying you. And so it's important that you did that. Well done. You don't have to say, oh my gosh, that speech was awful. What you can do is focus on what they did do well or where they're trying to go with it. I see where you're trying to do this. I see where you're trying to do that. And how do you know this? Because you talk to them ahead of time.
Yes.
Right? When you talk to them ahead of time, they said, oh, I'm trying to work on my vocal variety. I see where you're working on your vocal variety. And especially at the beginning of the speech, it was terrific. I think you just ran out of time to practice the speech, right? I think you just ran out of time to practice the speech. So apply everything you did at the beginning to the end. So that way we're building on it. That's the thing. A lot of times we think we're critical only on the negative. We have to be just as critical on what they do well. And that takes a lot of practice. We have to be really good at that. Thank you for the question.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you. Till another hand comes up, I think I'll still steal the light. So I also liked one more thing that you said about do it again, giving that as an evaluation, telling people, because ultimately the whole purpose of evaluations is to help the other person get better at speaking. And that can happen when you do it again. And members should actually take that as well, It's not about just completing your projects for the DCP, but it's more about learning to be a better public speaker. So I think I really like that tip as well to put it into the sheet. What I realize is when we deliver our evaluations, written evaluations on the PDF, we really can elaborate a lot. You have those paragraphs where you can write comments against the rating that you give. But when it is a typical meeting or a contest, you only have 2 to 3 minutes with a grace of 30 seconds. So at that time, you have to be really precise and concise. Would you have some tips to help with good evaluations, but verbal in a time limit? I know I'm bringing time again, but because it's contest, that's the reason why I need to know this.
If it's in contest, what you want to do is understand the specifics of how to get better. Be very specific about how you can help that target speaker move forward. And remember, the target speaker is here, right? The target speaker is right here. I'm helping you get better, but I'm also looking out at my audience saying, all of us can get better.
Yeah.
Right? When I talk about your gestures, I go, because gestures can be powerful when they are outside of the shoulders. We can gesture outside of here, this window. And so when we gesture out here, it's so much more powerful. You agree? Absolutely. So target speaker, let's do that. When you can give the audience something to chew on, then they're like, oh, that's good. You just taught me something. Winner. Yeah,
absolutely. Yes. And how much of, like when we say that we must summarize before we end, when the red card comes up and we know we need to wrap up in 30 seconds, summarizing an evaluation is something that I've been hearing about this and reading about this, that it's important to summarize before you actually walk off the stage. Now, even putting that too within all of that, to celebrate and elevate and stimulate and summarize is actually pretty challenging.
What you want to do with the summary is understand why. Why do we need to summarize? Why do we need to summarize? Because in our minds, we all think, I already said it once. I don't know why you need me to say it again. You need to say it again because the audience has a short attention span. You need to say it again because the audience ain't smart. You need to say it again because the audience was looking at their phone. that's probably more real. So
Yeah.
you need to say it again because they forgot all the brilliant things you said earlier. And you need to say it again to link it. Stimulate can also be for your audience. Stimulate your audience with the conclusion. If we're saying that we have a body of an evaluation and that's for the target speaker, then in the conclusion, in the summary, now I'm talking to the whole group. This is what we learned, class. This is what we learned and how we can all get better by, and then include something from the speech.
Mhm.
We can all get better by
And again,
helping everyone in our restaurants feel welcome. We can all get better when we remember that it's for our mother, right? You can sort of go into another part of the speech when you do the summary, and that's where you can like, nailed it. Here are the main points, and stimulate my audience, not my target speaker, but my audience. Did that make sense?
yes, thank you so much for that, because, and also the language that we use, we can all improve by, so it's upon us. It's not about you did not do this, or you could have done this, or you should have done this. It's more about we will all improve by, we can all learn by. So the focus is on us. Thank you so much for that absolutely splendid session, Fursey. It has been a privilege, a delight, an honor actually to have you at District 126 for this session. There are a couple of people who have expressed that they're unable to join the WhatsApp group. So may I request you to probably share the code once more, or if it's possible, the link in the chat to share. I think, yes, let me ask everybody.
I think those people that couldn't join, it's because I didn't want them to. I mean, no, I didn't say that. Did I say that? I didn't say that. Hang
It's
on,
on
I'm gonna
record.
get that.
It's on
I'm gonna
record
get
now.
that link to you here in just a moment. Hang on one second. All right, in the chat, let's see if it allows me to share.
Yeah, I would like to second that. Thanks, DTM Fursey. It's such a wonderful session. I'm glad that I missed out on a personal event, but I don't have any regrets because this such an amazing session, which it was very helpful. And the way that you have the body language and the way you are using the gestures, right? I think it's awesome. Thank you so much.
You're welcome, Chandra. Thank you. And thank you very much, Mayuri. I appreciate the invitation. Thank you. It's always a pleasure to meet with people, and this is terrific.
Yes, but thank you so much. You've been most kind with even sharing the WhatsApp group where you just